We are, in this video, going to talk about edit modes. So the edit modes are going to affect how you're able to move around things with your audio and how your editing workflow is going to go. So there's four. One thing first is just getting to them. So they are in this top left area. There are four, kind of 4.5. So shuffle, spot, slip, grid, and there's two versions of grid, absolute or relative. There's our 4.5, right? Absolute version or relative version. We're going to stick with absolute for now, and we will talk about relative later. So those four are going to be your friends, and you can switch between them on the keyboard using function keys F1, F2, F3, F4. And I don't actually do that one very often because on my keyboard I have to actually hold down the function key to do that. So I use option 1, 2, 3, 4 with the numbers, the regular numbers above your like letters on your keyboard, right? So I use my left hand, hold down option with my thumb, and then I can go 1, 2, 3, 4 with my fingers on my left hand to switch between. So that's usually what I use, is option for those guys. Alright, so let's start with shuffle mode at the top left here. So shuffle mode is like a magnet for clips. So if you grab a clip with the grabber and move it to the left in shuffle mode, it will automatically snap to the track to its left. And if I do that same thing to the right, it will eventually snap to the one on the right as well. So it cuts out any space in between them. So it like sucks up all the intervening space between two tracks, or two clips, sorry. And this can totally cause problems with music that's in rhythm, right? Because it doesn't care whether maybe this starts on a beat, this clip, and this is the next beat right there. All it cares about is where the end of the last clip is. So it's going to just hit that clip, and it does not care whether you're on the beat or not. So typically you don't use shuffle much in music that's recorded to a click or that's, really adhering to the tempo of your session. Shuffle mode does work awesome though for vocal recordings, so like podcasts or radio stuff, where you can zoom in with shuffle mode and you can make a selection of, say, one and then all you do is hit delete and watch what happens. That audio that, say, was in the next word and the is gone, and it just sucked up the space that it would have left. So shuffle, it just, whatever is to the right of this in the clip, and actually in the clips following it down the line, it's going to move everything in this much, the amount that I delete, right? Which is awesome for spoken word because it just lines up the is gone and the next word comes at a nice natural place where the person's speaking. So it works awesome for editing spoken word. But the fact that when I delete this and everything down the line shifts, watch this clip here when I hit delete, everything moves, right? So you delete one thing here or move one thing over here, or cut whatever it's going to be, right? If you get rid of something in this clip over here, all the audio that's following it on that track is going to shift down that amount. So that's not good if all this stuff over here was in time, right? So if you're doing things that really depend on time being consistent, watch out for shuffle. It's not great. But for doing things like edits in a vocal track, it's especially spoken word, it works great. It's really cool. Also, if you take a clip and copy and paste the clip somewhere, so I'm going to paste it right here with Command V. Notice also it's preserving this spacing that I paste. So here's where I'm going to paste. Watch how this space is kept. It'll keep that space and just shift this right clip out. See how it moved it away and it preserved this space when I paste it in? So everything kind of reacts to everything else. Everything's kind of magnetic and connected when you're in shuffle mode. So be careful because you will get some surprises if your music is in time and connected to the grid in some way. Alright, and now let's go down to slip mode. Slip mode is like freehand mode. So if I'm in slip mode of my edit modes, and I have the grabber and I grab a clip, I can just smoothly move it however I like. It's also going to ignore the time in my track. So I've probably pulled this guitar track out of time. It's not going to sound too great anymore compared to all the other music, right? Slip mode is unconstrained, and I'm undoing to get back to where it was. The other thing about it is, in shuffle mode, I can only pull this clip up until it hits another clip, right? So it's constrained by the clips around it. But in slip mode, I can overlap and basically overwrite. I'm not really overwriting because the audio is still underneath, but now I'm going to hear this clip, and then when it hits here, it's going to play this one, right? But it allows me to overlap if I want to, right? And now that clip has actually been kind of chomped. It's been trimmed away where I cut and pasted. So here or where I dragged. So now that's back to where it was. So slip is totally free. You can move things around. Same deal for the selector. Same deal for the trim. So when you trim, it's totally smooth as well. So it's really good for trims. It's really good if you need to delete something and just have it be gone, but everything else in the clip remain in the same spot. If I hit delete, it just makes a hole, right? Nothing else gets affected in any way, right? So slip is really good for that kind of stuff. And then we're on to spot mode. Spot is basically a dialog box. So anything I select with and it opens up as soon as you click on something. So if I have the grabber and I grab a clip, and I know exactly what time this clip I'm going to move it to. So let's say this is in minutes and seconds. I can set exactly where the left end of this clip is going to sync to. So I can click on, I want it to go to 1 minute and 1 second. So I put in 1 minute, it's already there, but 1 second, and I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to zoom out, and that clip, and it will overlap anything else that's there, goes exactly to 1 minute, 1 second. So when you have very, very specific moments in time or specific bars and beats that you want to move something to, like, okay, I want this section, and it brings up a dialog box as soon as I click on it, and I want to move it to bar 8, first beat, and then I hit OK, and it hops over bar 8, and I'm done, right? Okay, so the other thing that Spot does is if I want to trim something precisely, maybe I want this to be an exact amount of time. If I use the trim tool, I can trim off a specific amount of time. So it's going to open up the dialog box. So I can affect the duration by just going to the duration thing and go, I want exactly a 10-second clip. And I hit OK, and it spreads that out so that it's exactly 10 seconds long. That makes sense? So one more time. So if I spot and I grab, it's going to say, I've got this trick that I can do. I can put this thing at exactly 50 seconds. So I put my new start point at 50 seconds. I hit OK, and it moves that over to the exact 50-second point, right? And then if I use the trimmer, I can adjust the length in either direction, I think, of my clip as well. So it opens up the Spot dialog with the trimmer, and I get a start point and I get a duration. So because the trimmer was on the left point, it's going to ask me where I want it to start. So maybe I want it to start at 45 instead of 43 where it was, and hit OK. And it just cuts a little bit off the edge. So if you need a clip to start at a precise moment or end at one, so notice my trimmer is set to cut at the right end, and I'm in Spot. So I click on it, my dialog opens up, and then this time notice it's the end that's giving me an option to change. And then I can go, you know what, I want the end to be at exactly 1 minute. Okay? Okay, and it cuts it for me. So Spot is about very specific times, either times in your session, so where do you want me to put something, or what exact length do you want it to be using the trimmer. So grabber and trimmer when you're in Spot. Cool, last one, grid. Grid is constrained by this right here where it says grid. This is our grid control here. Right now it's in bars and beats, so I'm going to leave it bars and beats for now. So right now an 8th note is what my grid is set to. So if I zoom in, you see these vertical lines hopefully here. That means that any of my tools are going to be constrained to the grid. I can't select anything in between it. If I try and trim, same deal. It will trim exact chunks that are the size of the grid. Also, if I try and move it with the grabber, it will jump to each section in the grid. And this is awesome if you've recorded everything to the session tempo and everything's recorded to fit the grid of the session, right? So then you know you're always moving the stuff around in time. It's perfectly set, right? So if I know this is a beat right here, maybe the beginning of a beat or something, I know that I can move it right on to the next spot in time if I want to, the next spot on the grid. And if it's a beat, say it's a quarter note beat, well, maybe I just want to go, I want this to be, instead of on the first beat of bar 19, I want it to be on the second beat. So I can just switch this to quarter note. That will make larger chunks, and now I have beat size grid. And then when I move it, it's going to go right over to the second beat. Notice 19.1, 19.2, 19.3, and then your grid setup here also affects what you see in the rulers. So right now it's a quarter note grid, so I'm seeing one beat at a time in this zoom, at least for now, right? And then if I go to half notes, let's see what happens. Then I get 19 and 20, and I actually get another line that's not labeled right here halfway through. So half bars right now that I'm moving in big chunks. And I can even do entire bars. So I can just move this music from one bar right to the next. Right, so that's our grid settings here, and you don't have to be in bars and beats. You can switch them. Right, you can go minutes and seconds. You can switch how it's gonna adjust. Right, I can put it on minutes and seconds, and then you just set your maybe you want to move something over exactly a second or half a second. Right, so typically though, this is used with bars and beats because we've recorded everything to a grid, right, to a click, and then it makes it much easier to do some editing, right? It's really going to help you. So that's grid, and we can talk about the two variants of grid, absolute and relative, later. Finally, in grid, you can also overlap just like you can in slip. So grid's not going to stop you from overlapping clips like that. Okay, so hopefully that all made sense. On to the next one.